Japanese mythology is the rich tapestry of gods, spirits, creation stories, and heroic tales that have shaped Japanese culture for centuries. At its core, it is a collection of narratives, oral, written, and ritual, that explain the origins of the world, the ancestry of the imperial line, the forces of nature, and the boundaries between the human and the supernatural. These stories appear in classical texts such as the Kojiki and Nihon Shoki, in local folklore, in ritual practices at Shinto shrines, and in artistic expressions from theater to anime. Defining Japanese mythology means embracing this variety. It is not a single unified creed, but a layered tradition where myth, history, and religion overlap. Understanding the scope matters because these myths operate on several levels. Historically, they provided legitimation for rulers. The myth of Amaterasu, the sun goddess, underpinned the divine status of the imperial family. Socially, myths framed rituals and seasonal festivals, guiding agricultural cycles and community cohesion through rites at shrines. Psychologically and artistically, myths furnished archetypes, trickster deities, protective kami, shape-shifting yokai, that continue to inspire literature, film, and everyday symbols. The significance lies in how these narratives persist. They inform modern identity, influence public ceremonies, and appear in contemporary storytelling even when reinterpreted. Concrete examples clarify this influence. First, the Kojiki's creation narrative, where Izanagi and Izanami give birth to the islands of Japan, remains central to national mythic imagery and is recited or referenced in religious observances. Second, the tale of Amaterasu hiding in a cave and the other kami coaxing her out explains rituals of purification and the importance of light symbolism, seen in shrine architecture and festival parades. A modern application is the way filmmakers and novelists adapt yokai stories into horror and fantasy genres, while local festivals celebrate specific kami thought to protect fisheries, rice fields, or neighborhoods. Scholars and practitioners debate how to treat these stories as literal history, symbolic narrative, or living religious practice. Challenges arise in separating later political reinterpretations from earlier folk beliefs, and in addressing how modernization, urbanization, and global media reshape understanding. Japanese mythology connects directly to religion, art, politics, and daily life. To study it is to observe how ancient narratives continue to shape modern Japan's rituals, values, and imagination. In Japanese mythology, the story begins with primordial forces and gods whose names and actions shape the world and human relationships. Foundational deities and creation myths describe how the universe moved from chaos to ordered land, established divine genealogy, and set the moral and ritual framework that influenced politics, culture, and everyday life. At the center are the Kotoamatsukami, the separate heavenly kami who appear at the formation of heaven and earth, and the younger generation of deities like Izanagi and Izanami, whose descent into creative action provides the core creation narrative. These myths are significant because they explain not only physical origins, islands, sun, moon, but also social authority and religious practice. For example, the birth of Amaterasu, the sun goddess, from Izanagi's purification ritual becomes the theological foundation for the imperial lineage. The emperor is traditionally viewed as a descendant of Amaterasu, giving political legitimacy a divine dimension. Another clear example is the slaying of the storm deity Susanoo's monstrous offspring, which results in the gift of the sword Kusanagi, part of the imperial regalia, linking mythic heroism to ritual symbols of power. Real-world applications of these myths appear in ritual, art, and place names. Shinto shrines enshrine particular kami like Amaterasu at Ise, where annual rites reenact parts of the myth through succession and renewal ceremonies. Folktales and no theater adapt episodes such as Izanami's descent to Yomi, the land of the dead, to explore grief, taboo, and the boundary between life and death. In contemporary culture, manga and film often rework these deities and motifs, showing how creation myths remain a living source of imagery. Scholars and practitioners offer different interpretations. Some emphasize the myths as political instruments that cemented imperial rule, Others read them as symbolic narratives addressing human concerns: birth, death, purification. Critics point out the patchy, compiled nature of sources like Kojiki and Nihon Shoki, written centuries after oral traditions, which complicates claims about original meanings. Challenges include disentangling overlapping local myths and recognizing later editorial layers and continental influences. Yet these creation stories connect to other aspects of Japanese mythology: ritual practice, concepts of purity, kami-human relationships, and symbolic geography. By tracing origins to divine acts, they provide a framework within which law, ritual, and identity are continuously interpreted and performed. Kojiki and Nihon Shoki are the twin pillars of Japanese mythological literature, foundational texts that record the origins of the gods, the creation of the islands, and the ancestry of the imperial line. The Kojiki, compiled in 712 CE, is the older and more intimate of the two, a 3-volume collection of myths, songs, and genealogies presented in a flowing, oral-derived style. The Nihon Shoki, completed in 720 CE, is more formal and chronological, written in classical Chinese and intended as an official history. Together, they define much of what we mean by Japanese myth, providing names, narratives, and cosmologies that shape ritual, literature, and identity to this day. Their significance cannot be overstated. These texts were produced during a period of political consolidation and were used to legitimize imperial authority by tracing the emperor's lineage back to the sun goddess Amaterasu. Beyond politics, they preserve layers of indigenous belief creation myths, kami genealogies, and heroic exploits that inform Shinto practice, seasonal festivals, and artistic expression. They are primary sources for scholars, artists, and practitioners who draw on their stories to understand Japan's spiritual heritage. Concrete examples show how deeply embedded these texts are. The myth of Amaterasu hiding in a cave, recounted in both works, explains the origins of ritual dances and purification rites still performed at shrines today. The story of Izanagi and Izanami's creation of the Japanese islands provides narrative structure for place-based worship and local deity veneration. In literature and popular culture, both texts have inspired countless retellings. From no plays and ukiyo-e prints to modern manga and film that reimagine kami and myths for contemporary audiences. Scholarly opinion varies. Some view the Kojiki as closer to oral tradition, preserving archaic poetic forms, while others argue the Nihon Shoki's political framing reveals intentional statecraft. Critics point out that both texts were compiled by elites and may suppress regional variations or marginal voices. There are methodological challenges, too. Discerning older mythic layers from later political interpolations requires careful philological and comparative work. These texts connect to other aspects of Japanese mythology. They intersect with ritual practice, local folklore, archaeological evidence, and later religious developments like Buddhist syncretism and shrine-state ideology. Understanding Kojiki and Nihon Shoki is essential not only for knowing the stories themselves, but for grasping how myth, power, and cultural memory intertwine in Japan's spiritual landscape. In Japanese mythological tradition, two broad categories of supernatural beings dominate stories, rituals, and daily life: kami and yokai. Kami are divine spirits or deities thought to inhabit natural phenomena, objects, ancestors, and places of power. They are not always omnipotent gods in the Western sense, but are respected presences whose favor sustains community well-being. Yokai are a diverse class of spirits, monsters, and uncanny creatures, tricksters, vengeful ghosts, shapeshifters, that often embody human fears, moral lessons, or unexplained occurrences. Understanding major examples of each clarifies how symbolism in Japanese myth operates as both social instruction and psychological mapping. Among kami, Amaterasu, the sun goddess, is central. She symbolizes light, order, and imperial legitimacy. Her retreat into a cave and eventual return in myth represents restoration of social harmony and the necessity of communal ritual to coax balance back into the world. Susanoo, the storm god and Amaterasu's brother, embodies raw, chaotic energy that must be tempered. His slaying of the eight-headed serpent Yamata no Orochi symbolizes heroic confrontation with destructive natural forces and the civilizing of wilderness. Inari, a kami linked with rice, fertility, and prosperity, often appears through fox messengers, linking agricultural abundance to spiritual exchange and reinforcing the interdependence of humans and kami. These kami show how divine figures personify vital cultural values: light and order, the containment of chaos, and the spiritual basis of livelihood. Yokai like kitsune, tengu, and yurei serve different symbolic roles. Kitsune can be benevolent or deceptive, symbolizing ambiguous morality, transformation, and the boundary between human and animal worlds. Their stories underscore caution around desire and the power of disguise. Tengu, once feared as disruptive mountain demons, evolved into tutelary figures connected with martial prowess and mountain asceticism, symbolizing both danger and disciplined spiritual training. Yurei, often women wronged in life, represent unresolved emotion and social injustice. Their haunting illustrates consequences when social norms fail. Contemporary Japan reinterprets these figures across media, tourism, and shrine practices. Amaterasu features in national ceremonies, Inari shrines receive offerings, and yokai appear in anime, festivals, and local folklore tours. Critics caution against romanticizing yokai as merely quaint monsters. Their stories often encode historical trauma or gendered power dynamics. Linking kami and yokai reveals a cultural continuum. Both express how the unseen shapes daily life, prescribe relations between people and the world, and provide symbolic language for negotiating fear, order, and belonging.